What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, if you haven't guessed it by now, we're pulling a classic. PLASTIDIP. So what I went ahead and did here is masked off the area that I don't want to get any PLASTIDIP on, and that includes our headlight lens right here. I used a plastic bag, like a regular, grocery store bag, and then I used some tape. Now, I wanted to just use the bag and kind of take it around the headlight to make it really easy, but it didn't end up working out. The bag has too much play in it, and you don't want any of that plastic like touching on the areas that you're trying to get your PLASTIDIP on, or else when you go to take that protective layer off, it might take your PLASTIDIP with it. So what I have to do now is figure out what I want to do to get around the edge over here. I'm probably going to do tape, and maybe I'll find some extra paper I have laying around, and we'll do some paper out to eliminate any overspray. So let me go see what I can find, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm back. I found some black stock hard-like paper that the kids would usually use to draw on, but I mean, what are you really going to draw on black paper, right? So what I'm going to go ahead and do first is I'm going to do a nice, precise line of tape around the perimeter here of the headlight trim, and then after that, I'll use some pieces of tapes along the edge of the paper and kind of just place them around that one piece of blue tape. I've taken an auto body course when I was in high school, so I know pretty much the basics of how you should do this and how to get it pretty, clean and correct. Alright, so I've got my perimeter pretty much finished. Just go around it and make sure that none of that tape is touching your chrome plastic. So just give it a nice good rub with your finger or something small enough you can find to fit down in there. There will be a little bit of exposed paint in here. It's really hard to get into that crack and really, get it covered up, but it is what it is. I mean, it probably won't make a huge enough difference, and honestly, what you can do with PLASTIDIP anyways, and kind of what I thought of after the fact, was I could have put this tape line maybe, the edge of it right here instead, and done my circle around, and as long as I apply a heavy enough layer of PLASTIDIP to the painted area as well, I can always peel that up, because this chrome piece doesn't actually touch that painted area right in there, so I wouldn't have to worry about peeling PLASTIDIP from here and tearing up the PLASTIDIP that I want to stay on my chrome trim. So hindsight's always 20/20. It is what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and do it just the way I have it right now. I'll just make sure that I leave some pretty heavy layers right here, so that way I can just grab that small piece and pull it off as best as I can. The bigger the piece, the better, as always, but work with what you got. So what you can see right here is I took one of the pieces of paper, I put a piece of tape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to help mask off the painted areas, so that way I'm not sitting there doing a bunch of tape lines around and around. And yeah, you can buy some thicker blue painter's tape and probably get away with it, but this is still going to be much faster. It's much wider than anything, any sort of tape you're really going to be able to buy. So let's get this done. There you have that. We got our paper wrapped all the way around the painted surface of our headlight. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some cleaner, some degreaser, and I'm going to wipe down the chrome area and then dry it off, and we should be ready for some PLASTIDIP. Alright, so what I'm going to use as my degreaser is this Zep all-purpose cleaner and degreaser, as you can see there on the bottle. This is pretty much the same thing as Simple Green, and that's what I recommend for degreasing before using any kind of PLASTIDIP or even paint on most surfaces, if you don't have any acetone or stuff like that. Alright, so I got the trim nice and cleaned off and degreased. What I recommend, if you used a paper towel like myself to clean off that trim piece with, is maybe go after that wipe down with the paper towel, use a microfiber cloth, so that way you pick up any of those little small fibers and cotton pieces that the paper towel can let off onto your headlight, so that way you have a nice, perfectly clean piece of trim to work with, and you don't have to worry about your PLASTIDIP having a bunch of little imperfections in it from, you know, little dust pieces and whatever else. So with that being said, let's go ahead and apply some layers. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to spray just a light pattern of PLASTIDIP on this right here, or you could even do it on one of your paper surfaces, just to make sure that the tip is spraying clean. There. That way we know our first pass isn't going to have a bunch of splatter on it, because we've already gotten that out of the way. And I actually recommend doing that every time you respray this can if you've let it sit for a few minutes, because the PLASTIDIP is going to build up in that tip a little bit. Alright, so that right there is going to do it for my first coat. I'm going to let that dry for a little bit, probably about 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm going to come back and hit it with another coat. Now you might be able to see it, I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up, but it did leave a bunch of splatter type marks on the trim, but that should be fine. PLASTIDIP, when it dries, generally will dry flat no matter what. I mean, you can apply this stuff over and over and over again, and it typically blends in with the last coat no matter what. So as long as your last coat comes out looking just fine, everything will be good. Pro tip, you guys, if you're impatient like me, grab a hairdryer, or in my case, just a regular heat gun, and you can apply a little bit of heat to the PLASTIDIP, and it'll help it dry a little faster. Sometimes it makes it dry a little stronger as well, but this will definitely speed up the process. Now when you're using any kind of heat to help your paint dry and get through your steps a little faster, another tip is don't get too close and don't stay in one area for too long. You're not trying to, you know, heat up your PLASTIDIP or your paint so much that it re-liquefies. The goal here is to dry it. So just make sure you use some nice swift motions. Just go back and forth over some areas. You'll see it start to, especially with PLASTIDIP, it'll start to get that matte finish and become really nice and flat. You can see that a lot of our spotting is gone. We still have some places to fill in over here. And then, you know, we're going to apply about maybe 2 or 3 more coats to this, and it should be done. Make sure also for the PLASTIDIP or the paint that you're using itself, make sure you're getting, you know, angles that are back here, you know, in these areas, and also spraying in these directions so that you make sure you're getting your inner part of the trim and also the very outermost piece. You don't want to have any like chrome, you know, that people can see like right up there in the front or right there on the edge. We're trying to make this thing look nice and uniform and professional. So I'm going to go ahead and apply 2 or 3 more coats, and then I'll come back with an update for you guys, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's pretty much finished. Alright, so I just put the last coat on. I went a little heavy. That's usually what you want to do with your last and final coat. This is the one that's going to fill pretty much anything in that you may have missed. I don't think I really missed anything. Everything looks pretty good. So now I'm going to use the heat gun again and get things dried a little quicker. Alright, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take off our paper masking and then also the tape that's on our painted side here. While the PLASTIDIP is still just a little wet, this will be a lot more forgiving just in case there's any of that tape touching our actual trim. Hopefully it'll just kind of release from it because it's still wet. If we allowed this to fully dry and it was attached to it, our PLASTIDIP would basically peel up and then it would grab whatever it's hanging onto and just ruin the whole thing and we'd have to start over. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Quick tip again, while you're peeling away your masking tape, what you want to do, especially with paint, is you want to pull the tape away from where you're peeling from, where you painted. Doing that prevents any kind of rubbing that you may accidentally do on your wet paint, and it also allows any paint that might be adhering from your tape to your trim to kind of just stretch, and then most of the time it'll kind of just pop back into its place and you'll be good to go. You could probably see a couple pieces of plastic there that they sprung back, I'm basically stretching those pieces out. You can definitely see some down here, but yeah, they're just ripping and springing right back, not causing me any kind of headaches. So there we go, we got the masking layer off. There is a little bit of black down here on the painted surface below the trim there. I'm probably going to try to use like a Q-tip or something small that I can just kind of rub that stuff out. I'll probably be able to peel this one right here, but like the ones that are way in there that I don't have anything to grab onto out here, I'm just gonna have to stick something in there. And it's like I said, hindsight 2020. I'll probably make sure I do what I was thinking about on the other side. When I do that, I'm gonna do my paint, or my tape line rather, out here, so that way I can grab that piece and just peel it right off, and it shouldn't be an issue. So, but this is basically what it's gonna look like when it's done. It's still a little bit wet. I'll hit it with the heat gun again, and I'm gonna do the chrome piece on the grill, and I'm going to do the chrome trim on the other headlight, and then I'll give you guys a nice pan over of everything when it's done. All right. Well, there you have it, guys. A classic PLASTIDIP. So I think it came out great. Tell me what you guys think in the comments section. I have a couple of areas that didn't come out so perfect. Accidentally touched an area over here, and right here I actually had to cut the PLASTIDIP with a razor and redo this little section down here on the front grille trim piece. Not a huge deal. I'm not worried about it. I didn't intend for this to be a permanent thing, and that's the great thing about PLASTIDIP, is that when you use it, you don't have to worry about it being permanent. This stuff peels off like vinyl, basically. It's rubberized coating, so be careful when you're washing this, and definitely be careful when you're handling anything around it. Some people might come up here and be like, oh, that's nice, and they might rub it a little too hard. They're going to end up slashing through your PLASTIDIP and ruining the whole thing. But it's still okay, because at least it's not ruining something where it's going to be permanent. You can just peel the rest off, redo it, or take it off because you don't want it anymore, So, with that being said, I have something really big coming for the Mini very soon. I don't want to give away any hints of what it could be, and if you might know what it is already, go ahead and take a guess in the comment section. Now, maybe a couple people in particular that I talk to, don't ruin it for anybody else. But trust me, guys, it's going to be good, and it's going to change the entire car. So stay tuned.